Okay, so let's go.
Okay, thank you for having me back. I'm sorry we are so late. Next week we will try to be on time. Okay? I would like to begin the class with a game. At my house, we play games all the time. We have what we call box games. Do you have box games? Yeah, you have box games in Brazil. And this Christmas, my children received a game called Wise or Otherwise. And it is a word game. And I want to play it with you now. But Alessandro, our Brazilian friend, says that you will not be able to play this game. He doesn't believe in you. But I believe that you can play this game. So now we are going to try. Okay? This is how it works. The game has many little cards like this. And on one side, it has a proverb from some place in the world. Proverb. A proverb is a wise saying or an idiom. And these come from all over the world. And what we are supposed to do is, I read to you half of the proverb. And then you make up out of your brain the second half. And then you type it into your computer and email it to Alessandro. Or put it on chat and send it in. So you write the first half and then you make up the second half. And then you send your answer in. And at the end of class, we will put up 2 or 3 or 4 of your proverbs and also put up the correct answer. And then you will have to guess which answer is correct. I will give you an example. Okay? Maybe I'll give you a few examples. Give me 1 second. Okay, here is, let's see. Here is one example. Let's see. Actually, there are several on each one. Okay. This is a Dutch proverb. Dutch. That means from Holland. Okay? The proverb is, cover up the pot. Okay, ... means and so on. There is a second half that you are supposed to make up. Just a second, we got a problem here. Okay, let's move the table a little bit this way, just to make sure that doesn't happen again. Okay, so you're supposed to make up the second half, but this time I will tell you what it is, what the true answer is. The true answer is, cover up the pot because there is an eel in it. Cover up the pot because there's an eel in it. Okay, that is apparently a Dutch proverb. Now, if you had made up the answer, maybe you would have said anything. You could say, cover up the pot so the water will boil, so the water will boil faster. Or you could have said, cover up the pot to make the tea whistle. You could have said anything you wanted. And in the end, you send your answer to us on email, and then we will put your answers up, and then at the end of class, we will choose and see if you can figure out which one is the correct one. I'll give you another example so you get the idea of what these are like. How about this one? I want to get a good one. Well, this is, oh, here's one. This is a Hungarian proverb. Hungary. A Hungarian proverb. When God made the rabbit, okay, so you think for a second, what do you think the second half will be? Does everybody know what a rabbit is? A rabbit is a small animal with big ears that hops. That's a rabbit. When God made the rabbit, what else happened? Are you thinking? Have you said something? Say something out loud. When God made the rabbit. Okay, you would be putting yours in and sending it to us now. But I will give you the true answer. What the Hungarians say is the true answer. They say, when God made the rabbit, he made the bushes too. He made the bushes too. So bushes are like small trees. They are plants that rabbits hide in. So when God made the rabbit, he made the bushes too. So I guess maybe the Hungarians are trying to say that God thought of everything. Or maybe God will provide. So anyway, that's the Hungarians' way. Okay, let's see. I'll give you one more, but then I'm going to give you one for you to do, and we will give you the answers at the end of class. Okay, but this last one is an example. One more example. We just love this game. We love this game at my house. We play it. We have played it many times since Christmas. Okay, here's the last one. This saying comes from Persia. It's a Persian saying. If you marry the donkey, okay, think. What do you think would happen if you marry the donkey? What do you think it would be? Maybe you should say it out loud. If you're looking at your computer, say, if you marry the donkey, do you know what you're going to say?
You've got problems.
What? If you marry the donkey, you've got problems? That's true. That's not what the Persians say. I guess the Persians are more tolerant of marrying the donkey. Okay, I'll give you the right answer. If you marry the donkey, you must carry his load. That makes sense. If you marry the donkey, you have to carry his load. Okay, now I am going to give you 3 of these, and you should write them down. And then as we continue with the class, you can send us your answers, and we will keep them, and at the end of class, we will choose some of your answers and put them up, and then the students, all of you out there, will have to guess which is the true answer and which is one that was made up by a student. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 of them. All right, here they are. I chose them in advance. Okay, let's see. The first one claims to be a Portuguese proverb. However, Alessandro says he never heard it. So maybe it's from Portugal. It says it is an old Portuguese proverb. It begins, "The king of the bees Okay, write that down so that you can think in a few minutes. You do not have to give us the answer now. You can give it later. But write that down, okay? And when you send your answer, send the whole thing, not just the second half, because we want to be able to tell which answer goes with which first half. So, write the whole thing and add your second half and then send it in. Okay, here's another one. Where is it? Okay, here's another one. That was number 1. This is number 2. If you have no relatives, relatives means father, mother, children, uncles, aunts, cousins, people in your family. If you have no people in your family, no relatives, what? You write it. That's the second one. And one more for you. I'm looking for a good one. Okay, how about this one? You should be able to get this because it's Spanish, and Spanish is close to Portuguese. So maybe you'll get this one. Number 3. When you can't get meat. When you can't get meat, what? Okay, you have time to think of 3 of them. Meanwhile, I will answer some questions that you sent over the course of the week. I have them printed out, and I want to tell you that if you have a question and you are not comfortable speaking English, you can write your question in Portuguese. The people who take the questions off of the internet speak Portuguese and will translate. So it is good for you to write in English, but if you want, you can also write in Portuguese. No problem. So send any questions you want all week long to the email address. What's the email address?
Margarita.Noyes.
Okay, you're sending it to my email address. I'll give it to you again. Margarita.Noyes, Margarita.Noyes. The capitals don't matter. At Seminario de Filosofia, right?
Yeah.
Seminario de Filosofia. .org. Is that right, Isabella?
Yeah.
Okay, there's the email address, and you can use it all week, and in English or Portuguese. Okay? And here are some of the questions we received last week. Let's see. Okay, the first question deals with the word opportunism, which was in the quote that we discussed last week. So the quote said, okay, where did it say that? The quote said, "Change is certainly upon us, menacing and certainly drastic. To meet it, there must be opportunism. The opportunism that answers to a profound realization of need." Now, the student who wrote this question said, why did the author use the word opportunism instead of the word opportunity? Let me put them up here. Opportunism. Opportunity. Okay, these words are closely related in English. An opportunity is a chance to do something. You take your chance to get in, to do something that you want to do. It is usually considered positive, a good thing. You do not have an opportunity for a bad thing to happen. So opportunity is good. Opportunism is a little bit different. Opportunism is more aggressive. Aggressive. And it seems a little bit negative, but not very negative. It is a little bit negative. When we think of opportunistic, a person or something which is opportunistic, we think of someone or something which takes every opportunity to get an advantage. So an opportunistic person or thing will advance by many means. It will get around obstacles, over or under or around or through an obstacle. we think of an opportunistic infection. Opportunistic infection. An opportunistic infection is when you are sick, then you become weak, and your body cannot fight off infection because your resistance is low. At that point, an opportunistic bacteria can attack and take over your body and give you pneumonia, so you will die. You'll die because an opportunistic infection took advantage of your body when you were weak. Okay? Opportunistic means aggressive, so that it will try anything, any way, to overcome an obstacle. So why did Levis use the word opportunistic to describe the action that he wanted people to take against the force of the world? Notice, he said, change is certainly upon us, menacing and certainly drastic. Menacing means this change is bad, very bad. Menacing is a strong word. We are afraid of something which is a menace. Menace. A menace is a terrible danger, a very bad thing. And this change in our culture is threatening to kill the intellectual life and the soul of humanity. It is threaten, threatening, a threat. It is threatening. It is threatening us. This change is threatening us. Therefore, we must resist aggressively. And we must resist in every possible way. We must get over the problem and under the problem and to the side of the problem and blast straight through the problem. We must behave like an opportunistic virus or bacterium. So the word opportunistic is mildly negative, only a little bit negative in English. It is not very negative. This student said that in Portuguese, opportunistic means like taking an unjust advantage or bad morals, evil. In English, opportunistic doesn't mean that. In English, it means aggressive. And you can be opportunistic in a good way if you are pursuing a good goal. So in English, opportunism is not bad. Not intrinsically bad, not very bad. It's just a little bit strong and aggressive. It's a good word here. it's a good word here because it has a slight negative connotation which wakes people up to say, yes, we must fight with this terrible. Sorry about that. Our whiteboard just broke. So we are fixing it right now, and I'm going to continue. Okay, let's see. Okay, here is another question. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll see if I can answer it. I live and work here in the United States, and nobody makes fun of my accent yet. I'm going to shorten this question. But sometimes it is hard to find words to describe situations I am in here, in daily conversation. When I have to go to the bank, the park, the supermarket, the hospital, the restaurants, I find that people have a very strong accent, and their accent changes from place to place. Here is the question. What do you consider to be a high-level English educated person? Since I know that people who hold high degrees are not able to speak in a comfortable way when they are trying to accomplish simple tasks like ordering cable TV or opening a bank account or watching a movie without translation. So I think the question is, we have people who study English and are capable of being in an academic setting. Is that whiteboard fixed and ready? We'll want to bring it back. They can go to college. They can interact about difficult books or in a scientific field or mathematics. But when they go to a restaurant or when they go to the bank or when they make a phone call, they cannot function. So, who is the best high-level educated person? The one who can do the academic English or the one who can order a hamburger at McDonald's? I think that is the question. This is my answer. There are two kinds of spoken language. There is the formal language of books, academic language, specialized language. A person can gain this kind of language by study. You can do it with books alone, by translation with dictionaries and grammar books. You can learn academic English, and you can learn it enough that you will be successful in academic circles. But there is another kind of English. The English that is spoken on the streets by people who are not well educated is different. When I teach ESL, that is English as a second language. I teach this to internationals, mostly who are not academic and not well educated. They are laborers. They come to the United States to work, and they are poor. Many of them come to ESL classes, and we teach something called routine speech. I'll write that down. Are these letters big enough?
Yeah.
Okay, routine speech. Most of the language that you need to do daily tasks like ordering at a restaurant or making a transaction at a bank, most of that language is routine. Routine means you say the same thing every time. It is a formula. It's a formula. You can guess what the other person will say, and then you say the right thing, and then you can guess what the next person will say, because it's always the same. For example, when you drive through a McDonald's, they will say, something like, "Welcome to McDonald's. Would you like to order a special sandwich?" Maybe they are selling a certain Angus burger. So they'll say, "Welcome to McDonald's. Would you like to order blank?" Welcome to McDonald's. Uh-oh, it's breaking again. Both sides. Maybe we should get like the chair and just sit it up on the sides, on the arms.
That's better.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Would you like to order blank? Okay, we're going to have to fix this whiteboard. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll say this very fast, and even a native speaker will not understand. But the native speaker knows they are going to say this. So we just immediately say, "No, thank you." And then they say, "What would you like to order?" So, you don't usually have to understand. You have to know what to expect. The best way to do this, unfortunately, is to have an American tell you what they are going to say in advance. That is how we do it in ESL. We tell the student what they are going to say, and then we practice. So I'll practice with the student. I'll say, "Welcome to McDonald's. Would you like to order an Angus burger today?" and the student will not understand, but they just say, "No, thank you." I say, "What would you like to order?" And then they say, "I'll have a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke." Okay. And then they say, "That'll be $4.25 drive-through." And you just keep going. So the point is, Americans do not speak clearly when they are using routine speech. So you have to know what they are likely to say before you go in. And that simply takes experience. So I am sorry for anyone who is trying to do this in a second language, but it will come with experience. And usually the people who you are speaking to in these routine situations where you are ordering cable TV or going to the bank, these people are not well educated. And they do not know that what they are saying is routine and that they are not speaking clearly. They don't know that. They think it is clear, but really it is not clear. It is not clear because they say the same thing over and over, and most people expect it and don't even listen. So for an educated second language person, you must think in advance what information the person will ask for and be prepared to give it. If you are well educated, then you are also very intelligent, very smart. So you can use your intelligence to plan a study of routine situations. What does a waiter say when I go to the restaurant? What does a person say when I call to make an appointment? So learn these things, maybe write down some dialogues, practice them so that you'll be ready when you have to do routine daily tasks. Okay, let's see. Next question. I have a little boy. He is 3 years old. I want to know about your method of homeschooling. If it is possible, please speak a little bit about this. Congratulations on your child. I have one piece of advice. This may not be perfect for your son, because your son may be a different personality. But this, if I can only say one thing, this is my advice. Actually, I have two pieces of advice. I just thought of another one. The first piece of advice is tell him stories. Tell him stories. Many stories. Make his imagination full of great stories. Tell him about the classical stories, like the Trojan horse, or some of the Greek myths. Tell him stories from history, if you know them. And if you don't know them, learn some. Tell him great stories of great people. And also great stories of larger than life, imaginary things, so that his imagination will be expanded and full. Also, tell him stories from the Bible. Make sure he knows about Noah and the flood, about the creation of the world, about the parting of the Red Sea and the children of Israel going through on dry land. Make the stories vivid. Make them come alive. Children like to hear the same story over and over again. They like it when you act out the story for them. Act out Moses leading the children of Israel through the Red Sea, and then Pharaoh and his army chasing after and being drowned in the waters. Act it out. Give them the moral of every story. Tell them also the stories of Aesop's fables, and make sure they learn the moral of the story. The years of childhood are years when they learn stories. They love the story for its own sake, but the story is a seed that you plant in the heart of the child. And later, the seed will grow up and become wisdom when your child is an adult. So, now is the time to tell stories. That's my best advice. I have two more pieces of advice. One is get rid of your television. If you have a television, get rid of it. That may seem harsh or draconian. That's a word we have for really serious. But I will tell you, I never had a television, a TV, in my house after I got married. So I have been married 25 years with no TV. My children never had a TV. And that helped a lot, because your child is hungry for stories. He will fill his hunger at the television set. And what he will take in will be a bad seed. It will make him stupid and make him corrupt. So I recommend you either get rid of the TV completely or put it in the closet and take it out only occasionally, once in a while. And spend the time telling your child stories and then letting him draw pictures, act these things out, letting his imagination go wild. That is my one piece of advice for today. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, Olavo tells you to take a good book and read it all in this way. Take one sentence, read it slowly, stop, reflect, experience what the author is saying, and keep on doing that until the end. This person started to do that with a book, and he has decided to translate the whole book. And he asks, is this a good idea? He is interested in writing skills. My advice is, yes, if you have time to translate a book, that is a good idea. But I suggest you do also one other thing. When you have written a small amount, put it away, and then on another day, take out your translation and translate it back into English. And then compare your English with the original English and make corrections. And try to understand why you have done it one way and the original was something different. And learn, as you do this, you will continue to put things back into English and making corrections that will give you the writing skills you need. So I suggest you translate into Portuguese and then a few days later back into English. It is harder, it will take longer, but it will be better for you than just translating into Portuguese. That's my advice. Okay. All right, here's a question about a sentence that we spoke of last time. The sentence is this: I knew then and I know now, it is no use trying to do anything, I speak only for myself, publicly. It is no use trying to do anything publicly. Okay, let me show you something. It is no use to try to do anything publicly. Okay, the question was, why are we not saying it is no use to try to do nothing? No use, nothing. This is what we call a double negative. Double negative. That means two negatives. In English, a double negative equals a positive. So, if you say, I don't do nothing, in English it means I do something. I don't, that's negative, do nothing, also negative. The two negatives cancel each other out, making it positive. So I don't do nothing means I do something. I don't do nothing means I do something. In English, this is not correct. Actually, you cannot say this grammatically. If you want to say, I don't do it, you must say, I don't do anything. Anything. Okay, that gives you one negative, and it means I don't. Okay? So, it is no use trying to do anything. That means we will not try to do anything. If we had said it is no use trying to do nothing, then it would have meant we must do something. It would cross out because it would be a double negative. So it is proper English to say it is no use to try to do anything. That means don't even try. Don't even try. It is no use. You will not succeed in doing anything. English is different from Portuguese in that way. In Portuguese, you would say, don't do nothing, I think. But in English, you can't do that. Only one negative will give you the negative. Then it must be positive after that. Okay, so let's see if there's any others. Okay, this person asks, should foreigners only use formal language will they sound ridiculous if they use slang and idioms and the language of the streets? And the answer to that is no, you will not sound ridiculous. Most Americans love it when an international uses slang. They will laugh, but they will laugh with you. They will like you and they will love it if you try to use slang. It will be funny because, I don't know, they'll think it's cute. I don't know. But I know you should try to use slang. Do not be formal. Be free. Play with the language. When I teach ESL, I teach as much slang as I can. The students sound the best when they are using slang. They sound like they're really American, or they're becoming Americanized. They sound good. So even if you use slang with a Brazilian accent, they will like it. I think you should use as much slang as possible. And if you have a question about how to use something, ask me. Send it to the email address, and we'll do our best to clarify how it is used. Okay, so try to use colorful language. Try to use the best, up-to-date language that is in use on the streets. And if you have any questions, ask, and we'll tell you what, like if something is bad, I'll tell you. But I say use it. Please use it. Okay. Oh, here's one. Someone asked about an idiom that they read in a different book. The idiom is to set someone's teeth on edge. Set someone's teeth on edge. The person read this in George Orwell's book, 1984. 1984 is the title of a book, and in it it had the phrase, to set one's teeth on edge. To set his teeth on edge. He asked, what did that mean? Apparently, the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English describes it as an uncomfortable feeling in your mouth, which is not true at all. That's not what it means. Nothing to do with it. This phrase comes from the Bible. It says in the Old Testament, the fathers have eaten sour grapes. They have eaten a grape, which is sour, and the son's teeth are set on edge. Okay, so the father eats something sour, and his son has his teeth set on edge. This idiom means that the sins of the father are punished in the son. The son will suffer if the father sins. Now, that is the origin of this. However, in common usage, it simply means that it gave someone, it made them go like this. Ugh. If something happens, maybe someone does something that is a little bit off color, and you go, ugh. You could say, he did this and it set my teeth on edge. It means it made me emotionally very uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with your mouth. It only has to do with your emotions of revulsion. You don't like it. It's like a sour taste that goes, like a lemon. Bleh. That's what it means. It's something which causes you to have a bad reaction, like, ugh. That's what it means. It set his teeth on edge. it upset him. Okay, that's it for this week of questions. Now, we want to go to the book. Now, let me tell you, Olavo is very sorry that he chose for you such a difficult book. He is thinking maybe he will let you off the hook. Do you know what off the hook means? He'll let you off the hook. Off the hook. That means if you are fishing and a fish gets a hook in his mouth and you reel him in and you take pity because you don't want that fish, so you let him off the hook and throw him back. So he's thinking about letting you off the hook, but not immediately. In other words, we must at least begin. We are going to begin, and we are going to try our best for a few classes. And if you cannot appreciate what is in the book, if you cannot understand it or it's too hard, you let us know, and Olavo will let us off the hook. He'll find another book, probably equally hard, and we will be out of the frying pan and into the fire. I'll give you that one too. You should be writing these down, by the way. If you write these down, you can use them. We will be out of the frying pan and into the fire. I think when Olavo chooses another book, we will be out of the frying pan and into the fire. That means the book will be just as hard, if not harder. So, I do not trust Olavo to give us an easy book. So maybe we should try to stick with the frying pan. That is Levis. And Olavo also told me that he got many of his own ideas from Levis, and that Levis is a key author for you. So he very much wants for you to understand what Levis has to say. But I find Levis very abstruse. This is an academic word. Abstruse. Nobody understands that word except academics. But I find Levis abstruse, hard to understand. But we will try. So, if you have your book open to, let's see, page 19, we are skipping the preface. The preface is also very hard. We're going to skip the preface and go straight to the horse's mouth. I'm giving you a lot of these. I'll give you that one too. Straight to the horse's mouth. Give me a sec. I like giving you these because then you can use them to speak to people. So we are going to go straight to the horse's mouth. In this case, Levis is the horse. If you go straight to the horse's mouth, you go straight to the source or the origin of something. You go to the one who knows. Okay, so we're going straight to the horse's mouth. We will skip the preface and begin on page 19. Chapter 1, Thought, Language, and Objectivity. Now, I want to tell you, after I tried to read this 2 or 3 times, and I asked Alessandro what he thought it meant, because I thought he was a very smart Brazilian and also a student of Olavo and a graduate of St. John's. I asked him, what does this mean? And Alessandro said, I have no idea. No idea. I said, me neither. And he said, good. I thought I was stupid. I said, no, I am stupid. So I went to Olavo, and he told me what it means. We spoke for 1 hour before we began to look at the book, and he gave me pages and pages of notes. And then, after 1 hour, we opened the book. If you can see, there is writing everywhere, notes, and more notes in my other book. And Olavo spoke to me for 10 minutes on the first word, and then another 10 minutes on the second word, and then maybe 5 more minutes on the third word. It was 1 hour and a half before we got past the third word of this book. So, good luck. That's what I say. Good luck. But I will do my best to tell you what Olavo says this means. And we will also read it together. And maybe you'll have some idea of what it means. And you can send it to me on email. Okay? If you have any good ideas. But meanwhile, I will tell you what Olavo says. And also what I have gleaned, and Alessandro has gleaned, from about 5 readings of the same text. Okay? So, let us begin. First, he begins with 3 words: thought, language, and objectivity. These 3 words are his title, and they do not have a simple meaning. You cannot read quickly and think you have understood. Levis has a special meaning for each word. Now, if you were reading the book by yourself, after you read the first chapter, maybe you would go back and understand what he means by thought, language, and objectivity. But I will tell you from the beginning what he means. Okay? Okay. Hold on. I thought I knew. Okay. When we talk about thought, there are many definitions of this word. It can just mean thinking. You know, you have all kinds of thoughts. Trivial thoughts, small and big, important and not important. But Levis is concerned with a certain kind of thought, a particular kind of thought, which is creative and which is logical and which is clear. A kind of thought which expresses the creative life within a person, a human being. Thought is like the sap that goes up a tree, and the tree is knowledge. So, Levis is talking about a certain kind of thought which you will be incapable of if you do not have a certain kind of education, a certain kind of training and background. So anybody can think dumb thoughts. Everybody thinks dumb thoughts with no education at all and no background. But in order to be able to think intelligent thoughts, you must have a certain kind of education. And the study of literature is a first step to training your thought process. Okay. Language. In Levis's mind, language means literary language. There is, in English, there are many, many words. There are many synonyms, words that mean the same thing, only slightly different. Many synonyms for a single concept. In addition to that, there are many images, pictures, that come from literature. And when you use the phrase that the author wrote, it conjures a whole picture in an educated person. The English literary language is rich. And if you are master of it, you are master of a universe of experiences that have been experienced by people from time immemorial, from the beginning, thousands of years. If you cannot read, then you have the experience of one lifetime. Maybe you're 21 years old. You have 21 years of experience of one person. If you cannot read, that's about all you have. Unless maybe you listen to other people who tell you of their experiences. But if you can read, you can experience vicariously the great experiences of other people throughout the ages, in different places, different times, different cultures. And if you have read about those experiences and lived them in your imagination, it's almost like you had lived through it yourself, and you are 5,000 years old and have lived 1,000 lives. So, if you have mastery of a rich literary language, it is going to affect your thought. Okay, so we have thought and we have language. The language does not mean a simple language of a few hundred, maybe a few thousand words that you can order a hamburger at McDonald's with. It means a rich language with many words and phrases and literary tradition. Okay? So, thought, language, and objectivity. Objectivity can mean impartiality. Does impartiality have a Latin root? Okay, impartiality. This means that you are not prejudiced or biased. You see things as they are and take them for what they are in reality. So objectivity has to do with the real world, reality, that which is true. Okay, so his title is Thought, Language, and Objectivity. And he is going to show the relationship between these. Okay, let us begin. I will read first a small amount, and then we'll talk about it. If you think we should, we're getting too long, let me know.
No, we should take a little break, and then go back.
Right now?
Before you start.
Okay, let us take a short break, and then we'll go back. What about those, getting them to turn in the Y's and other Y's?
Oh, they're sending the answers to the email.
Okay, we're going to take a break. If you want to submit a second half of the Proverbs from the beginning, those 3 Proverbs, do it now, because on the break, we're going to be looking at them. After the break, we will do a little bit more of this book, and then maybe have some questions. Okay? And if you have any questions, you can also send them now. So, short break. Okay, we're back. Very quickly, before we start the book, I want to give you a chance to vote on the Proverbs. And at the end of class, we'll tell you what the real answers are. So, you will vote number 1, number 2, number 3, and then A, B, C, or D for each. So, here is the first of the choices. One of these is the correct answer. 3 were written by you. Okay? The king of the bees, A, cannot do everything by himself. Okay. B, the king of the bees has no sting. C, the king of the bees is the owner of the honey. D, the king of the bees looks like Nestor Kirchner. Okay, you decide, is it A, B, C, or D? We'll tell you at the end. Now I'll give you the second one. Number 2, if you have no relatives, A, get married. B, if you have no relatives, you have no one to blame. C, if you have no relatives, you have no problems. D, this is a good one for philosophy students. If you have no relatives, you do not exist. You vote. Number 2, A, B, C, or D. We'll tell you at the end if you're right. Number 3, when you can't get meat, A, eat fish. B, eat vegetables. C, when you can't get meat, chicken and bacon are good. And D, when you can't get meat, meat will get you. So you choose. Which is the true ending to this proverb?
Okay, just hold on a second. Chicken and bacon are good, right?
Chicken and bacon are good, right?
And meat will get you.
Meat will get you. Are you giving it to them?
Yeah, meat. Some of them cannot read. But
Oh, some of you can't read it. Okay, so Alessandra is going to give it to you.
okay, so this is the third one, right?
Yes.
Can we go back to the first one?
Sure.
Okay.
The first one.
Play it again.
The king of the bees, A, cannot do everything by himself.
Okay,
Cannot do everything by himself. B, the king of the bees has no sting.
has no sting.
3, the king of the bees is the owner of the honey.
Okay.
And the king of the bees looks like Nestor Kirchner. I love that one.
Okay.
And I'll give you number 2 again. If you have no relatives, A, get married.
You have no relatives. Get married.
B, if you have no relatives, you have no one to blame. That's true. If you have no relatives, C, you have no problems.
C.
You have no problems.
Have problems. Okay.
And D, if you have no relatives, you do not exist. I love that one. Okay, you have to vote. Meanwhile, we must get to work and do this book, or else we'll be in big trouble. Okay, let's start the book. And at the end of class, we'll tell you the true answers. Okay? Let me see what time it is. All right, we'll go just a little bit of the book. Okay, Levis says, "This is not the book I have been often reproached with having promised a quarter of a century ago and never having produced. Judgment and analysis was the heading I put over some of the intended contents when they were printed in Scrutiny. I had coined the phrase as a substitute for practical criticism. Practical criticism, I used to tell my lecture audiences and the undergraduates who worked with me at my college, is criticism in practice, and we are engaged in that when, for instance, we decide that a novel is good, give our grounds for our judgment, and put the case with care, or when we inquire into the justice, or otherwise, of Eliot's conclusion, Hamlet being in question, that the play is most certainly an artistic failure. I didn't, that is, like the implication it had come to inhere in the formula that practical criticism was a specialized kind of gymnastic skill to be cultivated and practiced as something apart. The influence of that idea, I thought, was to be seen in Tilliard's odd and ominous tribute to 7 types of ambiguity, poetry direct and oblique." Okay, that is the first paragraph.
Okay. Could you read it again but slower?
Yes, I can read it again but slower, but I think maybe I'll go sentence by sentence. Okay? The first sentence. "This is not the book I have been often reproached with having promised a quarter of a century ago and never having produced." This is not the book that I have been reproached with having promised a quarter of a century ago and never having produced. First, the word reproached. He says, I have been often reproached. Reproach means to be scolded, to have someone say, "You're bad. What's the matter with you? Why did you not do this when you said you would?" That is to reproach. Okay? He, Levis, has been often reproached with having promised to give a book and never having given it. He said he would write a book, and he never wrote it. And people have been reproaching him for a quarter of a century. A quarter of a century is 25 years. A century being 100 years. A quarter is 1/4. 1/4 of 100 years, 25 years. People have been reproaching Levis for having promised to give a book and never producing the book. this book is still not the book he promised 25 years ago. So, why did he not write this book? Why didn't he write the book he promised? We will see as he continues. So, this is not the book I have been often reproached with having promised a quarter of a century ago and never having produced. Judgment and analysis was the heading I put over some of the intended contents when they were printed in Scrutiny. Scrutiny was a newspaper or a magazine. It was a publication that Levis was the editor of. Levis wrote a newspaper called Scrutiny. And in that newspaper, he wrote articles. And one of the articles was called Judgment and Analysis. Judgment and analysis is a phrase, a couple of words that Levis put together to mean something specific. It meant the same as practical criticism. Now, practical criticism was also something specific. Levis was an English teacher. And when he had students come in, he would give them a piece of literature, maybe a short story or a poem or an excerpt. And he would say, I want you to do practical criticism. That was an exercise for his students. They had to take the literary work and they had to judge whether it was good or bad, and they also had to criticize the work. They had to tell what they thought about the work, and they had to support their opinions intelligently. They had to write a paper about the poem or the story that he assigned. This exercise was called practical criticism. It was when a student takes a text and criticizes it in practice. They actually do the criticism. Now, Levis did not want to use the term practical criticism. For some reason, he felt the need to substitute a new phrase, judgment and analysis. Why did he need to use a new phrase, judgment and analysis? Why not just say practical criticism? We shall find out. Let us continue reading. This is not the book I have been often reproached with having promised a quarter of a century ago and never having produced. Judgment and analysis was the heading I put over some of the intended contents when they were printed in Scrutiny. I had coined the phrase as a substitute for practical criticism. Coined the phrase means he made it up. Okay? Practical criticism, I used to tell my lecture audiences and the undergraduates who worked with me at my college, is criticism in practice. I'll stop there halfway through the sentence. Levis intended or meant to write a book about practical criticism. And he was going to call it judgment and analysis. He felt the need to substitute the phrase judgment and analysis because there was a problem with the phrase practical criticism. So, when he spoke before students and undergraduates, people who are in college but not yet masters, he explained practical criticism the way I just explained it to you, that you take a text and you criticize it. Okay? He explained it that way. So, I used to tell my lecture audiences and the undergraduates who worked with me at my college, practical criticism is criticism in practice, and we are engaged in that when, for instance means for example, we decide that a novel is good, give our grounds for the judgment, and put the case with care, or when we inquire into the justice or otherwise of Eliot's conclusion, Hamlet being in question, that the play is most certainly an artistic failure. In this sentence, Levis explains what practical criticism is. He gives two examples. One is when a student reads a novel, which is a book of fiction, and says whether it is good and writes his opinions carefully and gives his grounds for judgment, means he supports it intelligently. The second example is when a person asks whether T.S. Eliot was right when he said that the play Hamlet was an artistic failure. Okay? So T.S. Eliot drew a conclusion about Shakespeare's Hamlet that the play was an artistic failure. In other words, it wasn't a good play artistically. If we question that in our paper, we are engaging in practical criticism. Okay? Reading on. I didn't, that is, like the implication. It had come to inhere in the formula that practical criticism was a specialized kind of gymnastic skill to be cultivated and practiced as something apart. Okay, he is now telling us why he didn't want to use the phrase practical criticism, and he felt the need to substitute in judgment and analysis instead of practical criticism. The reason he felt that need is because the phrase practical criticism had come to mean something different over time. It had come to mean a skill, a gymnastic skill. Gymnastic means you must be a great athlete to do this. An ordinary person, normal person, cannot do it. Only a superior athlete can do this. Practical criticism had come to mean something only an expert can do. Only a trained academic journalist can engage in criticism, practical criticism. So Levis didn't even want to use the phrase practical criticism because people might think it was something for only the elite, the most well-trained. He wanted to have a new phrase that the common man, anybody, could take as their own.
Here's a question, Margarita. What does in here mean?
In here means, we think of the word inherent. It means part of the substance. So in here means, in the case of the phrase practical criticism, it had come to inhere in the formula. It became a part of the idea that it was only for experts. So to inhere is to become a part of it. So a meaning was attached and became part of the idea of practical criticism. Part of the idea became that this is only for the elite. And since the phrase practical criticism came to mean a specialized skill only for the elite, Levis had to give us a new phrase, judgment and analysis, which he could have a new meaning. And the new meaning is the same as the old meaning of practical criticism. Just do it. Anybody can do it. Just give your opinion in a careful way, intelligently, and you are doing it. Judgment and analysis. Okay, so that's what it means that the meaning became part of it. It came to inhere in the formula. Okay, that practical criticism was a specialized kind of gymnastic skill to be cultivated and practiced as something apart. The influence of that idea, I thought, was to be seen in Tilliard's odd and ominous tribute to 7 types of ambiguity: poetry direct and oblique. 7 types of ambiguity, poetry direct and oblique, is apparently the title of a book or an article, probably a book, written by Tilliard. And I have never heard of that book, and Olavo hadn't read that book either. But apparently, Tilliard was defending the wrong idea. Tilliard was defending the idea that a person must be an expert to criticize literature, to engage in practical criticism. So, Levis is explaining the idea by alluding or referring to Tilliard's book, which he thought his readers would be familiar with. But this book is old and we're not familiar with it. Okay? Shall we go on to paragraph 2? Paragraph 2. In any case, I knew that tests of perception and sensibility and exercises in judgment and analysis should be, and should deserve to be, thought of as fostering the kind of intelligence in the training of which a university English school that deserved to exist and be respected would see the work of its justifying discipline. Now you notice this paragraph has only one sentence. The sentence is very complex, and Levis is known for writing complex, long sentences. We must take the sentence apart, phrase by phrase, to understand it. And we must go into the inside first, like I showed you last week with the mathematical equation. You go to the inside first. So, Actually, we could start in many places here, but I think maybe I'll start at the end. The last phrase is justifying discipline. Justifying discipline. A discipline is a means of training. It's a process of training. Justifying, well, we'll talk about that in a second. It's saying that an English school at the university level would see the work of its justifying discipline in certain exercises of practical criticism. So, an English school that deserves to exist. Okay, so we have an English school, university level, an English school at the university level that deserves to exist. So, one that has a merit and legitimacy, one that is legitimate, would teach certain things. It would teach a student how to think about literature and how to appreciate literature, how to understand literature. Okay, so an English school which deserves to exist would definitely and certainly teach a student how to appreciate literature. It would justify its existence by doing this. If the school does not teach students how to read and understand literature, then it doesn't deserve to exist. It is not justified. The English school is nothing if it does not teach students how to read, understand, and appreciate literature. So, the discipline which enables students to read and understand and appreciate literature is the discipline which justifies the existence of the school. So let us read again. In any case, I knew that tests of perception and sensibility. Okay, tests of perception and sensibility. Tests of perception and sensibility. In his practice of practical criticism in his classroom, Levis used to make the students read a piece of literature and criticize it. This was a test of their ability to see what is in the story clearly. That's what perception is. The ability to perceive or to see and understand what is in the story. Tests of perception and sensibility. Sensibility is your emotional reaction, how you feel in reaction to what you read. How you react to a piece of literature. For example, if you are reading something deeply stirring, something tragic, something deep and significant, do you laugh and make a joke, maybe a coarse joke, make fun of it? You will fail the test of sensibility if you do that. When you read something deep and serious, you should have a deep, serious, sensible response. And when you read something funny and light and comic and ironic, you should respond with a funny, light, comic, ironic response. So tests of perception, do you see what it is? And sensibility, do you respond appropriately? Okay? So, in any case, I knew that tests of perception and sensibility and exercises in judgment and analysis. Exercises judgment and analysis. Okay, this is his phrase for practical criticism. And judgment means deciding what something is like, deciding what it is, judging it. Analyzing is pulling things apart and putting them back together, understanding the structure, understanding how it relates. So exercises are for the student. The student needs to practice these skills and demonstrate that they can actually do it. So, in any case, I knew that tests of perception and sensibility and exercises in judgment and analysis should be, these things ought to be, should be, and should deserve to be, they must be, they deserve to be, thought of as fostering the kind of intelligence in the training of which a university English school that deserved to exist and be respected would see the work of its justifying discipline. Okay, so tests of perception and sensibility and exercises in judgment and analysis train the mind. So these things serve to train the mind. In a certain type of intelligence. Okay, they foster. That word is here. Foster means nurture and help it to grow. So they nurture and help to grow a certain kind of intelligence, which any English school should value. Any English school should covet this in its students. Any English school should demand that their students grow in this kind of intelligence, the kind of intelligence that is able to read a piece of literature and criticize it justly, criticize it well and wisely and intelligently. So, tests of perception and sensibility and exercises in judgment and analysis will serve to train the mind in a certain kind of intelligence, which the university English school, any reasonable English school, any good English school, which we have respect for, ought to see this the creation of this, the fostering of this, as it's justifying discipline. In other words, if the English school creates this, it is justified. If the English school does not create this, it is better left alone. It is better that it did not exist. It is a bad school. So, in this paragraph, Levis is beginning to make a case for judgment and analysis as an academic discipline, which ought to be used with students so that they will become intelligent and masters of the English language in a literary sense. Soon we will get to the part where people are saying it is not necessary to do this. Forget it. Who cares about it? Get rid of the whole thing. We don't need this. This is outdated. Forget it. And Levis is saying, no, we need this. We need this. Don't get rid of it. Okay. Do you think we should stop here?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, we're going to stop here and give you the answers to the game, and then it'll be next week. Okay, let's see what they were. Are you ready for your answers? Okay, the true answer. The king of the bees, bee, has no sting.
Okay, the king of the bees
The king of the bees has no sting.
has no sting.
I do not know what it means or why they say that. I don't know why. Maybe you can tell us what you think over email. If you do, we'll tell the audience next week what they mean, in your opinion. Okay, number 2. The correct answer is, if you have no relatives, get married. A, get married. Then you'll have some relatives. I would like that. If I had no relatives. Number 3. When you can't get meat, chicken and bacon are good. I think chicken and bacon are meat, but that's what it is. That's what they say.
So when you can't get meat.
When you can't get meat, chicken and bacon are good. Okay, good night. I will see you next week. Please send any questions you want in Portuguese or English. And if you want to say what you think these proverbs mean, I'll be very interested to hear it. And if you want to send me a proverb, and I'll make a guess as to the second half, that can be good too. All right, I'll see you next week. Thank you.